There we go. I think we have opened the meeting, Aaron. We might give it a few minutes. I see there's a bunch of people still joining us and coming in. So we might give it a minute or two just to get everybody the opportunity to join the session.
No problem.
Thanks for all of those who have joined us. We're just going to give another minute. There's a bunch of people still coming in, and then we'll kick things off. Aaron will do an introduction for us, and we will go from there. There's a fair few coming in now. I think that's going to kick things off. Maybe we can kick off with the introduction. I see there's still some people coming in, Aaron, but we could probably get started. We only have
let's
30 minutes.
No problem at all. We'll kick off with the intro. So hello, everybody, and thank you for joining us today on this joint webinar between KTSL and Servicely. We are going to be discussing the evolution of IT service management and the growing role of AI within the field. And particularly, we're going to focus on the benefits that it can bring. So where you can take advantage of it to increase efficiency, look to reduce your operational costs, enhance your user experiences, and also bring a level of proactive problem solving to what you're doing within ITSM. We're going to keep the talking mixed with the demo as well. So rather than just talking through what you can do with it, we're also going to show you some examples today within the Servicely platform. So just a quick introduction. My name is Aaron Perrott. I'm the CTO of KTSL. I'm a speaker and talker around the use of AI within ITSM. And I've been in the ITSM industry for nearly 30 years, the last 10 of which focused around AI. And Dion is with me today. He's going to be doing the demo, and he is one of the founders of Servicely. And do you want to give a quick intro, Dion?
Yeah, thank you, Aaron, and thank you to everyone for joining us. Excited to have a discussion around the evolution of AI in ITSM. Certainly, it is an evolutionary phase that we're in. I've been in the service management space for almost as long as Aaron. Maybe I look like a longer, but a similar number of years, close to 30 years. And I've really seen the evolution of service management from back in the day of really ticketing-based systems to where we are today. So quite excited to share with you just some general insights into what we're seeing, how organizations are leveraging AI. There's a lot of hype in the market, trying to cut through the hype and understand how does that bring real business value to organizations and what are the opportunities out there. So excited to be working with Aaron on the session today.
Thanks, Dion. So I think what we're going to do is we're just going to start with a sort of a general conversation around some of the ways AI is changing ITSM and the benefits. So one of the things it's very good at is helping agents and users raise and or triage tickets, because it can look at everything that's happened in the past within the system and then allow you to more readily triage something. And it can also point agents in the right direction. So whether that's finding the similar ticket, whether that's producing some piece of automated workflow to solve the issue for the end user and or for the agent, or simply producing or showing the right article or piece of information in order to help that triage, whether that's the end user triaging it themselves or whether that's simply making a consistent journey for the agent. And there's certain areas here where it can cut down on training costs, it can make it more efficient, but it also gives a more common solution every single time. And that's a better user experience. And it's sort of this concept of get it right once and then repeat it. AI is very, very good at allowing that to happen and to that to flow. So Dion, I think, just taking that a step further forward, I think you have a couple of examples around that you can sort of show and talk through. And if there's anything you'd like to add to that.
Yeah, certainly. And I think, from what we've seen in the service management and AI, so it's juggling multiple screens here, is that we really started off with it's been pretty evolutionary in the sense that in the early days, it was very much around virtual agents. And there was this notion of could we self-serve through virtual agents, aka chatbots. And I think it's fair to say those that were around probably 10 years ago when virtual agents kind of burst onto the scenes, it was a bit of a false start to a certain extent, in that we had the promise of the virtual agents being a fully automated, engaged experience, and very quickly came to the realization that virtual agents were very specific in how you had to say things in order to get the virtual agent to do something. But we kind of moved on from there, where we started to look at how do we now start to also improve, and obviously virtual agents have continued to improve, and we'll talk in a bit time of how that has fundamentally changed as we're now moving into the generative AI space with large language models, that even the virtual agent architecture and approach is fundamentally disrupted and changed to become a real kind of engagement channel for our users. But when we look at it from a service agent perspective, we know that one of the things that really helps us drive an improved service experience is when somebody contacts the service desk is how quickly can you solve my issue, and can you solve it on first contact? We know that operationally one of the challenges that we have is how do we ensure that all our service agents are able to deliver the same level of service experience to our customers. And then it varies depending on how long a person has been on the service desk, because there's this tribal knowledge or institutional knowledge that gets built up as people do more of the same stuff. If we could move that knowledge and move that into an AI system, maybe we could reduce that time to ramp a service agent, but we could also deliver a more consistent service experience. So what could that look like where we start to leverage these AI technologies? We'll just some very simple scenarios over here. So in this instance, Andrew calls in and we'll do a simple scenario of he has an issue with his SAP session is locked. And what we'll see happen over here is the AI does a few things for us. So the AI has been observing how these issues are being resolved, and it's done some automation around the classification and assignment of our particular incident in this instance. We can see over here is this is where we're doing this automated classification. So that was kind of one of the first entry points of where we were using AI to drive automation. We also then use it to really surface knowledge that's very relevant to this particular issue. So really making that knowledge close at hand for the service agent to be able to read the knowledge article and do something with that. And then we kind of went through the next evolution where we could start to do things like whether we wanted to find related incidents to understand was there an underlying problem or a major incident. And we'll see towards the end of the session where we actually now start to use agentic agents to do this kind of thing in real time for us. But also surfacing things like, hey, automated diagnostics. Well, how about if I made it very easy for the service agent to check the session and report back that the session's locked, and then being able to unlock the session and essentially set that call to resolved. And what we've seen is this ability now to not only significantly reduce the resolution time of dealing with this ticket, but we've also been able to ramp that service agent to deliver a far greater service experience. So this was really the first iteration of where we've seen how AI could really start to deliver real value. So we went from virtual agents, we kind of then moved into the world of, okay, how do we do automated writing and classification? And we continue along the evolution. And I'll hand back to Aaron to kind of talk to us in the next stage of what we're seeing in this space.
Thanks, Dion. And I think that the importance there is it's just about bringing some consistency, and it allows you to onboard more quickly. It allows a better user experience for both user and agent. I think where it's moved forward is where we start to talk around generative AI. So generative AI has moved the dial in terms of what we can achieve by using AI within ITSM. And generative AI is a great mechanism for doing some of the tasks that we don't want to do. And it's important to see AI as an extra pair of hands, really. So just another member of the team. So when something happens and you need to produce, say, an RCA or a knowledge article off the back of an issue or an event, or indeed a known error, and generating some known error detail, typically that's something that we tend to put to the back of our queue because we have issues that we need to deal with. We have larger problems that we need to solve. And going back and producing a quality RCA for something that's already happened is something that tends to slip to the back of the backlog. Well, we can use AI to help us there, because by allowing generative AI to generate that for us, it means we can still get all the benefits from having a good RCA or a good knowledge article or a good problem explanation without necessarily having to put the full amount of effort into generating it. So typically you would use the generative AI to, even if it got you to point A and you still went through a human verification before release, it's still doing some of that heavy lifting for you. And it's still providing that extra pair of hands. And it's really allowed a much higher quality of knowledge article to be there, but also better consistency and more variety, because typically those things come later in the process. And I think, Dion, you've got some good examples there of how we can leverage AI to do that type of thing within the tooling.
Correct. So you may have seen I did some activity on this ticket just so we have some meaningful data, and it'll give you some insights into the possibilities. Again, this is where we're now starting to move into generative AI. So we've gone from kind of classifier models where we could classify and allocate and recommend actions or tools for the service agent to take, as well as knowledge articles. As we kind of step through to the next iteration in generative AI, to give you a sense of the speed at which things are moving, virtual agents, we started out building kind of systems of intelligence, if you like, circa 2015, 2016, when IBM Watson was all the rage and it was all chatbot. We then had a period of a number of years till 2020, 2021, and it's kind of accelerated with OpenAI's ChatGPT, and that was kind of revolutionary, and it was all about generative AI and LLMs. And that's great because I can go in and I can say, hey, write this more professionally for me. And how can we bring that into technology? And doing simple things like, it is fixed, let me know. It's probably not what we'd want to respond to our users, but we know service desk agents have high volumes of calls and they want to move on to the next one. Well, what if we could use some generative AI to kind of uplift that message and make it a slightly more user-friendly? Hi, Andrew, the issue has been resolved. Please let us know if there's any further things we can help you with. So that's one area where we see very quick and easily, how can we start to bring these LLMs into the real world in these business applications? But more importantly, as Aaron suggested, is we know that often a case, a ticket, be that a request, an incident, whatever it may be, has a lifespan, and that lifespan can vary depending on the particular ticket. It can have many, many comments through its life cycle from both the customer or the user to internal teams and departments that have worked on it. It can be assigned across multiple teams at different times. It has SLAs that may be running against that ticket. And if I need to get a single view of what's actually happened, well, that could take me a lot of time to try and collate that data to get a summarized view. Excuse me. I could take that a step further, and in the instance of a major incident, we know what happens is invariably a major incident occurs and suddenly everybody's in a Microsoft Teams channel or a WhatsApp channel or a Slack channel, and everybody's talking and doing a whole bunch of stuff trying to restore the service. However, when we get to the end of it, the major incident manager now has to go and try and collate and correlate data across multiple sources, different timestamps, and try and put together a timeline of what's actually happened for the life cycle in order to do the RCA incident review report. It turns out, and in particular, when we start looking at some of the models that are now being made available with reasoning capability in them, these models are surprisingly good if we give it large volumes of this transactional data and say, go and figure this out, work it out for me, and give me a summary so I don't have to piece the data together. So in this instance, we've just done as a quick demo to show you how we can use that technology. So I'll set this to resolved and I'll set this to closed. What the system now does is it takes all the data, and this is fully configurable as to what data I choose to give it, how much, how little, and you control the prompting. So the amazing thing is with these LLMs, there's a whole new skill that becomes available, which is around prompt engineering. How you serve the context window to these LLMs and then ask it to do things for you can significantly influence the output. So you have a lot of control as to how much detail, what specifically you want the LLM to do with this data and how you want it to present it back. So over here, we've done a very simple example where we could simply say, right, give us a ticket summary. Tell us who it is. If we were tracking things like if it was a particular company, what the priority, it was assigned to the SAP, the assignee progression, the incident was as follows. You would have seen I assigned it while Aaron was talking. I went and assigned it to Andy. If this ticket had bounced backwards and forwards, I could even prompt the LLM to say, how many times was the ticket reassigned? But I could take that a step further because I'm actually able to pass full context, including timestamps across to the LLM. I could ask it, how long was it with a particular assignment group, for example? And it's able to do the deduction based on the timestamps of how long it's spent with a particular person or assignment group, etc. We can also track, you'll see over here as I was sending it back and forth a couple of times just to create some data on the workflow. And as mentioned, you can see the timestamps. So this is data that we can use the LLM to actually do meaningful things with based on what we're trying to get out of the system. And then we've gone off and you can see over here, it's come back and said it was moved to resolved and then back out of resolved twice. The issue's been resolved. Further problems can be reported if encountered. It was closed by Dion, closed at this time. And how did we perform against our SLAs? And in this instance, we've even given it a whole bunch of backend data to get granular details of what's been done. So as we can see very quickly, for a human to go and collate that data and pull it together and provide a report is a lot of work and a lot of heavy lifting and a lot of time consumed. That's not the most productive usage of their time. Let's use AI, and this is just one of many examples where we can use AI to really drive that improvement for us, shorten the turnaround times to get back to the business of what happened and being able to deliver that. Just taking that one step further, when we look at, Aaron touched on being able to go and create knowledge articles. So if I were to just very quickly do a simple example over here, again, we'll just do SAP session is locked on this instance. I will just do the classification and service. So we have a simple incident we've created over here. What we set up was, well, we know that creating knowledge is often something service agents don't like to do, even if we put KPIs and measurements. What if we could, again, do a very simple thing like say, well, hold on, could submit this to create a knowledge article. And what that does is, because I never gave it any data here, so again, you have full control, right? So if you have your agents are putting in closure notes, the more information you have within the tickets, the more the knowledge article will be relevant to your organization and the richer it will be. For the purpose of the demo and the time constraints, we'll keep this pretty simple. But what it'll also show you is the power of how the AI can actually take a limited amount of information and let's say go and generate a knowledge article. And what that does is it comes in, again, we would typically have a workflow. You wouldn't necessarily go straight from draft to published. You might want to have a peer review or human review, at which point you would then go ahead and publish it. But we can see that very quickly, generative AI is allowing us to far more quickly start to generate knowledge articles and make it a lot easier. Even if I were to go and type in, just in loose English, bad grammar, bad spelling, brain dump article, hit the generate content button, suddenly I have a professionally presented knowledge article. As opposed to today, one of the concerns are my spelling's not great, my grammar's not great, I really have to think about it, therefore it's in the too hard basket. So that's just yet another example of where we can use generative AI to help make things easier. Now I'll hand back to Aaron, where we'll now talk about Agentic AI, which is now the latest kind of, we've moved on from generative and now we're starting to talk about Agentic AI. So over to you, Aaron.
Thanks, Dion. Yeah, and I think Agentic is maybe a new term to some people, and it's been around a little while, but it could be described quite simply. All Agentic AI means it's how AI can take the output from one task that is done and use that output in a secondary task. So it's more about having AI being able to do more than just one thing and then stop. It's allowing it to sort of feed one thing that it does into the next and into the next. So it's all about using it sequentially. So it's quite a straightforward term when you think about it in those contexts. And don't worry so much about how it's working, but just focus on the outcome that you can get from using it in that way. And by allowing it to sort of automate workflows from start to finish, as opposed to just purely one step within the process. And it's all back to that extra pair of hands. In the agentic mode, it's almost acting as if it's got 2 or 3 pairs of hands, and it might be doing 2 or 3 different roles. Back to what Dion said around sort of prompt engineering, you can give AI a different role to play. So whether that's the role of helping somebody from an end user perspective, whether that's the role of helping somebody from an agent or infrastructure perspective, that's all down to the type of role that you've given it. And agentic AI just allows those multiple touch points across the AI to take place. And I think, Dion, again, you've got a good example here where we can sort of show that in action for the people on the call.
Yes, certainly. And it's worth mentioning that this space is moving at a pretty solid pace. As I mentioned, we were talking about generative AI was all the rage, as it were, literally a few months ago. Now we're on to agentic. But I think what we're seeing is it's the coming together of all these technologies as a real enabler. And for those more technical on the call, this just hasn't happened by chance. It's really been an evolution of the AI technology. It's the coming together when we look at agentic is large language models, i.e. generative AI capability, with retrieval augmented generation, which is another mechanism that's become an underpinning capability of these systems. And then this notion of vector data stores, so really turning the data into embeddings and bringing this all together in a cohesive manner to really deliver business value to organizations. And what does that look like? We've just set it up in this demo. This could be through a virtual agent. It could be coming in via an email. It could be whatever we chose, but this was a good way for us to demo. So imagine if I said, create a new user for Dion Jones and give him an email and order him a security fob. So this is where we now start to being able to use the LLMs and generative AI, where we can now go through the process, and I'll just assign that to support. We'll just call that a request. And what that allows us to do now is, whether we're surfacing this via a virtual agent interface of, hey, I need this, or whether it be an email that's coming into the system and the system and the LLM is processing that email and saying, okay, I know what to do with it, or whether it be in a co-pilot type fashion, what we're able to do is we're able to use our agentic AI agent in this context to actually go and start to do some work for us. And what we can see over here is the agent actually working in the background. And what this agent's done is, first of all, it said a primary task has been processed by the multi-agent task orchestrator. And the way these agentic systems work is you have kind of the main agent, which takes the information you give it, and it basically looks at that information and says, okay, what do I need to do with this information? And it has agents that it can control or can talk to that are essentially capable of executing a task. So if we look over here, is it took what we gave it, it's broken it down and said, okay, create a new user for Dion Jones, and it has an agent, which is user provisioning agent. So it said, I know you know what to do with this, so I'm going to give this task to you as the multi-agent task orchestrator or the main agent. And then it said, well, we need to give Dion Jones an email. And I see I have an agent that knows how to update a user's email. So it's passed that off and said to that agent, hey, you need to go and create an email for this user that's just been created. And then it said, but hold on, you've asked for something additional, and that is to order a security fob. I don't have an agent defined that knows how to do that. So what I'm going to do is I'm simply going to go and I'm going to create a subtask, which is order a security fob for Dion Jones, and that's going to get assigned to a queue, and someone's going to go and pick it up. And what we've just done is we've dynamically taken giving some English instructions to go off and actually execute that. And just very quickly to give you some insights, effectively the way this is working is in the back end, is we have these agents that are sitting there. And many customers have, I might actually use the report a problem one, if I can see where it is. Give me one sec. Many customers often say, well, how do I do automated problem diagnostics? Well, it just so turns out, why not have an agent that's monitoring all the incidents that are being created, looking for similar incidents that are occurring over a period of time, and on the back of that, actually going and creating a problem to assign to the problem manager to go and do an investigation, and then linking all the records that it found, all the incidents to this new problem with a detailed analysis of what's happening. So this is where we're now really getting the agents to start working for us. And we have a similar agent in this system that we do for major incident, where we say, monitor if you see a certain number of similar incidents in a specific period of time, go ahead and create us a major incident. And if I had to go over here, we can see it had created. So this was automatically created, this incident, major incident VPN connectivity issue, detecting affected 4 users with 4 reports in the last 10 minutes. The issue has been raised 4 times in the last hour, and we can see there's a bunch of incidents that have been linked to that major incident automatically created. So a lot more that we can talk about, just conscious of time. I know we wanted to be able to leave some time for some questions, but hopefully that's given you a bit of insight into the evolution that we've gone from where we had virtual agents, we then had classification, we then had generative AI, to where we are today, which is our agentic AI, or really leveraging the automation. So with that, I'm not sure, are there any questions that have come in? Might have a look.
Yes, we have about a handful. So
Okay.
First one is all of the stuff that you've shown, is that out of the box functionality? What's available today?
Yeah, so largely it is the Agentic stuff's in final pre-release, and that'll be available. Everything else is there. The LLM stuff, etc., is available today. That's in the latest release 1.10. And obviously the Agentic will be in 1.11, which will be the next release later this year. But everything else is pretty much there, available today.
Excellent. So next one, is the AI available in the self-service side of ticket creation, i.e. on the front page of the portal that self-service users can use?
Yeah, so we just happen to do it on the agent interface. It could be, it's an input channel, whether it's coming from the portal, whether it's coming from email, we can take that and pass that through the Agentic engine and basically break that up into the tasks and allocation as required. The other thing you can obviously do is, we didn't touch on that, but you could even, now that whole notion of assignment, which has always been the challenge when people log things via self-service, it's like, well, who does it go to? Well, we don't know until we get it, and then someone has to triage it. Now we can start to tie up resolver groups with the context of what this resolver group does, and the Agentic AI can say, oh, okay, you're responsible for working on issues like this, and automatically assign them.
Excellent. Then there's a few on the incident summary piece. So first of all, can it be sent to a requester? And then there also seems to be a use case around summarizing into time cards.
Yeah, so I mean, the good news is that the ability to use the context window creation and hand that off with a prompt to the LLM to do the work for you is not limited to incidents, problems, changes. You could use time cards. You can do, as I say, with some of these reasoning models, you can pass it pretty much any data and ask it to do reasoning and pass back those results. So we're actually working with a customer who's doing some stuff in the security space, basically building up a context window based on the window, based on the user, a whole bunch of other information, and then handing that off to a LLM focused on security threat identification and saying, right, based on this information, give us a threat report. And that's then sending it back into Servicely in this instance, where security is now doing that, whereas before they would have to go off to different systems to go and do it. So it's limitless in how you can use this technology to really start to drive the automation.
And then the final one, which is, or the final two ones, which are a bit broader in terms of AI and the general use of AI. So issues around the realm of workforce in terms of AI and what type of issues does AI face, and where do we start if we want to leverage AI?
I think maybe I can help there. So at KTSL, we provide sort of a free AI assessment for organizations, where we come in and we give you a roadmap and look at where you're at the moment, and then we look at good use cases to get you going. So there's examples where there may be security concerns, or there may be concerns within the organization of how best to implement it. So what we can do is take our experience over implementing AI over the last 10 years and help you get going, and also help you spot where you're going to get good value early. Because one of the key things is to make it a really positive experience from the off, and that sort of allows you then to expand the use of it out across the organization. So that's something that we can certainly help with. And whether that's getting in touch with us via Servicely or direct, we can sort of help put together a business case or put together an implementation plan, or just work with you to sort of start that journey in terms of leveraging AI across the business.
Right. Thanks, Aaron.
And then the very final one, will old inaccurate info influence how AI processes new data? So if organizations sit with historic information, backlog information that cannot be cleared out, how can we deal with that?
Oh, look, so it's a very good question, to be honest. And just in the interest of time, I'll give a very succinct answer. There are mechanisms to kind of determine more current data carries greater weighting than legacy or older data. Because suffice to say, in the world of generative AI, LLMs, it's a garbage in, garbage out. When we were doing kind of utterance and intent labeling of data, was slightly less critical. No doubt today, what goes in is what's going to come out, but there are certainly mechanisms by which you can kind of determine the freshness of the data and the weighting of the data based on the currency, etc. So there are mechanisms to deal with that.
Yeah, and a lot of it comes down to the prompt. So again, without going into too much detail because we're at the cusp, but yeah, you can tell it to segregate across data timing. You can tell it to rank a system above another one. So it's all about building up that sort of that prompt that you're asking, and that can help refine the data that it returns. And there's lots of options, as Dion said, and you can even phase it. You could say, look here, okay, I've not found something, go to the next level, go to the next level. And that can all be controlled through the prompts. So you've got a lot of configuration options in terms of how you manage the data that's within the large language model.
Excellent. And we just have one final one popping in here. So is how does all of this stuff relate to the ITIL framework? Is it still adopted and working according to ITIL?
Look, it's a good question. I think Aaron's probably in a better position to talk to that from a process perspective, but look, it's here to stay. I mean, Aaron, I know your comments on kind of how it fits into the framework as we move forward.
Yeah, look, I think the answer to that is yes. So you can flow the process in with AI to ensure it conforms to ITIL. I think though equally, ITIL obviously is a framework. You can move within it. So whilst you want to take some of the good parts of the disciplines from it, I think there's an opportunity for AI to streamline and enhance those existing processes. And I think the speed of which it's moving, there's an element where there's some areas of the process that needs to catch up with some places that could be automated. But when you look at AI as just an extra pair of hands, remember, you can tell it how you want it to work in many ways. So you can make sure it conforms to your process, but also making sure you get the most out of it in and around that process, of being flexible in terms of where it can genuinely speed something up, but with the same guardrails that you would expect and the same governance that you need. So it's just about working within it. And whether you're ITIL or whether you're working in a different framework, AI can fit within that process. So it's something that sort of goes hand in hand with it.
I think that more or less concludes the questions, unless we just have one more kicking in here, which is around release notes for 1.10 and 1.11, but that's probably something that we can come back to.
Yeah, certainly.
Apologies that we've gone slightly over by 5 minutes, but thank you everybody for attending today. We really appreciate it. And please reach out to both your service lead contact and your KTSL contact for further information or any additional questions that we didn't cover today or you prefer to take offline. We're more than willing to answer them. And a copy of this webinar will be sent to all of you and will be available online shortly after the conclusion. So again, thank you very much for giving up your time today. We all really appreciate it.
Thank you, everyone.